Tom Holland is one of the most famous actors alive. He won the BAFTA Rising Star Award in 2017.
And the BAFTA Rising Star Award goes to Tom Holland.
And has appeared in movies that have collectively grossed billions of dollars worldwide. But the more people looked at his career, the more they started asking whether Tom Holland was a generational talent or just the perfect actor for the perfect franchise. The suit was always the star. In December of 2021, Spider-Man No Way Home crossed $1.9 billion at the global box office, making it the 8th highest grossing film in the history of cinema. The actor wearing the suit was 25 years old, and every reputable entertainment publication in the world was declaring him the next great Hollywood leading man, the heir to a long line of actors who had made the word star mean something. His face was everywhere, and then the suit came off. Because at the same moment that Tom Holland was being crowned the future of Hollywood, another version of his career was quietly going chaotic in the background. A version that the press releases did not cover. A version built from collapsed productions, brutal critical consensus, and box office numbers that no amount of goodwill could explain away. And it started with Chaos Walking, a dystopian science fiction film based on a popular young adult book trilogy, co-starring Daisy Ridley, who was fresh off the Star Wars sequel trilogy. Chaos Walking opened with a very poor $3 million domestic debut and limped to $27.1 million worldwide, against an estimated production budget of between $100 and $125 million. Lionsgate had to order a full round of expensive reshoots because the movie had been received poorly at its initial screen tests. It was supposed to be released in 2019, but with the rewrites and reshoots, the release was delayed. This slowly took away the excitement for the movie and meant it never regained its initial momentum. And when the movie was finally dumped in theaters in February of 21, it turned out to be a big loss. Chaos Walking had everything a major Hollywood hit was supposed to have. 2 globally recognized franchise stars, a built-in fan base from the best-selling novel it was adapted from, and a 9-figure budget behind it. Yet despite all of that, it still became one of the biggest commercial disasters in recent Hollywood history. Failures on that scale always lead to finger-pointing, and in the aftermath, some of the blame inevitably landed on Tom Holland. Sorry, Tom will never be anything more than Spider-Man. He's too known for only being that character. It sounds to me like Mr. Holland was, or is, rather good at selecting bad scripts, directed by not-so-great directors. And for every Tom Holland, there are at least 25 young actors in line behind him. One box office failure could have flown over everyone's heads, but in 2023, The Crowded Room came out. It was an Apple TV Plus limited series that was seen as Holland's formal Emmy campaign.
Danny, do you know why you're here?
I have these blank spots.
This was the project that was supposed to serve as a declaration that he was more than Spider-Man, but it debuted to a 14% score on Rotten Tomatoes as the lowest rated project of Tom Holland's career. Critics rejected the series, calling it unwatchable, convoluted, and gimmicky. These are not isolated incidents, they are a pattern. And the pattern tells a story that the box office glory of No Way Home was never designed to tell. The uncomfortable truth sitting at the center of Tom Holland's career is this: one of the most famous actors on the planet has never once demonstrated the ability to carry a film without a pre-existing brand doing the heavy lifting for him. The billion-dollar grosses, the global recognition, the Golden Boy press coverage, all of it was generated by the suit, the logo, the intellectual property, and not by the man wearing it. The illusion of the Marvel prodigy. To understand how that gap between public image and commercial reality was allowed to grow so wide, we have to track back to the beginning. Back in 2015, when Marvel and Sony reviewed over 1,500 audition tapes from young actors worldwide in their search for the next Spider-Man, a 19-year-old British kid, fresh off the London West End, had walked into a room of Marvel executives and outshone every competitor, including future Academy Award caliber talents like Timothée Chalamet to win the most coveted role in Hollywood. However, Holland didn't grow up loving acting or wanting to be an actor. His background was built in a dance studio and then on a stage. He had been spotted at age 10 at a Richmond dance festival and went through 2 full years of rigorous ballet, tap, and acrobatics training before earning the title role of Billy Elliot the musical at London's Victoria Palace Theatre in 2008. The training built something genuinely impressive, but it built a dancer, a gymnast, and a physical performer, not an actor. When the moment came to audition for Spider-Man, Holland leaned directly into that physical part of himself. During his screen test with the Russo brothers, the script notation read, "Spider-Man flips into frame." Holland, sticking to his training, asked permission to execute a real backflip in the room. When the casting team hesitated, his choreographer warned him, "If you flip and fall, that's my career." But Holland ignored the warning and did it anyway. Spider-Man Homecoming director John Watts said Holland blew his audition out of the water.
That's gotta be terrifying as an actor. Like, you're walking in with probably your childhood idols.
Do I need to do that? I know we're on different teams. I just don't want to be disrespectful to you.
Surrender.
Wait. Whoa, that thing does not obey the laws of physics.
He specifically said he just was so young and sweet and just charming. And then in the audition, he did a full backflip, like a standing backflip. In addition to being really great on tape, it was like watching a video of the real Peter Parker. While Tom Holland was being praised for his physicality and his perfect backflip, nobody was talking about his dramatic range and his ability as an actor. And that was because Marvel and Sony were not actually searching for the next best young actor to fill the role of Spider-Man. They were searching for a performer who could physically bridge the enormous, expensive gap between live-action plates and heavy CGI stunt work. Modern superhero filmmaking lives and dies on the smoothness of the moment the camera cuts between the real human body and the digital model. And Holland's gymnastic background solved a costly logistical problem that no amount of training could have easily fixed.
Yeah. That was better.
And jump!
Sony ultimately won an internal creative argument favoring Holland's physical ability over a stronger, dramatic candidate. The casting was, at its core, an athletic decision dressed up in the language of artistic discovery. And once he was inside the MCU, the way everything worked made sure the distinction never had to matter. Because the MCU does not ask its performers to carry dramatic weight alone. It distributes that weight across a system specifically designed to protect its assets. At the center of Holland's Peter Parker was a highly specific, highly cultivated persona. Anxious, stumbling, eager to please, radiating the nervous energy of a teenager on his first day of school. It was charming and commercially effective.
My name is Dr. Otto Octavius, Peter.
No. There's no way your name's Dr. Otto Octavius.
But charm is not acting, and the MCU's writing ensured he rarely had to demonstrate the difference. Every time a scene approached genuine emotional depth, the formula deployed a perfectly timed quip, undercutting the tension before it could expose the performer's ceiling. And when charm alone wasn't enough, the dramatic burden was quietly transferred to the veterans surrounding him. Robert Downey Jr., Michael Keaton, Samuel L. Jackson. These were not co-stars so much as structural load bearers, carrying the scene's emotional gravity while Holland's Peter Parker bounced around the edges. And when even that wasn't sufficient, the final layer of protection activated, a billion-dollar post-production apparatus that masks his performance in CGI spectacle, ensuring that the audience was reacting to the digital environment rather than the actor standing in front of a green screen. The contrast becomes clear when you hold his performance next to his predecessors. Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, directed by Sam Raimi across 3 films beginning in 2002, was anchored in a profound, quiet melancholy. His Peter Parker carried the psychological weight of duality, the burden of being 2 people simultaneously, and conveyed it most powerfully in moments of complete silence.
See ya.
People consistently pointed to his emotional vulnerability and his authentic inner conflict as the defining quality of his portrayal, with one assessment noting that his performance emphasized inner conflict, moral weight, and soft-spoken determination in a way that made his Spider-Man feel like a classic, grounded hero who carries his struggles with sincerity. Andrew Garfield brought something even more technically formidable. He trained at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama, and with a Broadway career that would later earn him a Tony Award for Best Actor in Angels in America.
And the American Theatre Wing's Tony Award goes to Andrew Garfield.
Garfield was a classically trained stage actor, applying the full weight of that craft to the role. He earned an Academy Award nomination for Hacksaw Ridge, proving that his MCU tenure was a chapter in a legitimate dramatic career, not the whole story. Britannica described him as giving his roles a unique vulnerability and emotional depth. Tom Holland's Peter Parker, by contrast, was lighter, faster, and more alive in terms of action scenes. But dramatically, he was considerably shallower. Where Maguire and Garfield used the Spider-Man platform to excavate genuine human suffering, Holland used it to deliver a highly optimized, four-quadrant friendly performance that the Disney machine had been pre-calibrated to receive. The audience loved it, and the algorithm rewarded it, but nobody thought to ask what would happen when the suit came off. The acting technique breakdown. As Spider-Man, the MCU made Tom Holland a global star, but it also protected him from dramatic exposure and trained an entire generation of audiences to associate his face with feelings of warmth, safety, and delight. Holland could see where his career was heading, and in 2019, he decided to prove that he was more than Spider-Man, that there was more underneath that suit. But in his journey to prove that, he would discover a huge difference between performing and inhabiting one. Tom Holland's first serious test in the acting world outside the MCU was Antonio Campos's Netflix adaptation of Donald Ray Pollock's Southern Gothic novel The Devil All the Time. Holland was cast as Arvin Russell, a character navigating deep religious trauma, inherited violence, and a capacity for lethal rage.
To me, saying she got that way from some boy. Don't fucking lie to me. Lies.
It was the exact opposite of Peter Parker in every conceivable way. The accent, the posture, everything was different. Even the world was different, and Holland worked hard to get there.
It's exciting for me to be able to play this character who talks with a lower register, who's slower, who talks with maybe a more menacing voice.
That ain't no preacher. He's as bad as they got on the damn radio.
He committed to the Appalachian drawl and constructed a physicality built around tension and stillness. The effort was clear for all to see, but effort is not the same as transformation, and people were quick to catch where Holland's performance stalled. Vanity Fair described the film broadly as a starry mess. It was a verdict that exposed the difference between having the right cast and actually telling a compelling story. What Holland delivered was a performance built from the outside in. The accent, the posture, the scowl, they were all surface performance, nothing underneath. Viewers could see the darkness of the character, but they couldn't really feel it. Holland's limitation becomes clear the moment Robert Pattinson enters the frame. Pattinson plays Preston Teagarden, a predatory, charismatic preacher, and from his first scene, the contrast is impossible to ignore. He refused to dialect coach entirely, building his character's high-pitched southern drawl through instinct alone. Film updates described his performance as one where Pattinson completely sinks into the role, and noted that there's never a moment where we don't believe him. Pattinson's performance comes out on top specifically for his ability to transform without prosthetics, commanding the screen through sheer internal authority. He was quiet, unpredictable, and genuinely menacing. The contrast to Holland is not incidental. Both actors shared scenes, and both of them were playing dark, violent men in a dark, violent film. But Pattinson arrived at his character through internal logic. He built psychology first, before letting everything else follow. Meanwhile, Holland arrived at his own character through external construction. When they both occupied the same space on screen, Pattison was living his character while Holland was just visiting. Pattison's career trajectory makes the comparison even more pointed. He had come from a franchise every bit as shallow as the MCU, the Twilight Saga, and he had spent a decade systematically dismantling that image through a series of radical, uncompromising artistic choices like Good Time, The Lighthouse, Tenet, and The Batman. He understood that franchise fame was a cage, and he escaped it through sheer creative aggression. Holland, in The Devil All the Time, was attempting the same maneuver but was executing it with far less conviction. If The Devil All the Time exposed the ceiling, the Russo brothers' Cherry demolished it entirely. Cherry was based on Nico Walker's autobiographical novel. It follows a young man from an aimless college student to an army combat medic to an opioid addict to a bank robber. It is a movie that demands everything from its lead: innocence, trauma, desperation, and an absolute moral disintegration. The Russos, fresh off the billion-dollar spectacle of Avengers Endgame, treated the material like a prestige showcase for their star, shooting in a hyper-stylized, chapter-driven format, clearly designed to generate awards conversation. But the result was one of the most revealing professional documents of Holland's career. Variety's review, headlined Cherry Review, Tom Holland acts methodically in an overblown dud, identified the precise problem. Holland was not lost in Cherry, he was executing Cherry. Every beat, every emotional escalation, every moment of supposed raw vulnerability was technically correct, but internally hollow. In the scenes depicting full addiction, where a performer of genuine psychological range disappears so completely into the chemistry of the character's destruction that the audience forgets they are watching an actor, Holland remained visible. Variety said Holland touched an array of dissolute looks and moods, yet there was no real danger to him. Cherry has 37% on Rotten Tomatoes tomato meter, and that failure was attributed largely to the Russo brothers' misjudged directorial choices. It is fair to note that some reviewers defended Holland's specific contribution. The Curb argued that his anger is terrifying, his sadness real, and called him an excellent conduit in a film that struggles elsewhere to tap into reality. Film Update said, Tom Holland delivers a haunting, searing, and devastating performance, but even he can't save Cherry from ultimately amounting to a grating, off-putting, and uneven mess of a movie. These assessments are not entirely wrong. Holland is not a bad actor, and the effort was genuine. But effort in the context of Cherry is itself the problem. A credible performance of addiction and despair should make the effort invisible. What people could see was an actor who was highly visible inside the performance, working hard, hitting his marks, and never once dissolving into the character's psychological abyss. The distinction matters. When Joaquin Phoenix played a deteriorating addict in Requiem's spiritual heir, The Master, or when Matthew McConaughey physically destroyed himself for Dallas Buyers Club, the audience did not watch a performer trying to simulate suffering, they watched suffering. Holland in Cherry looked like a well-prepared student turning in an impressive assignment. The grade was respectable, but the experience was not haunting. But nothing exposed the limits of Holland's prestige ambition more completely or more publicly than The Crowded Room. The Apple TV Plus limited series cast him as Danny Sullivan, a character inspired by Billy Milligan, the first person in United States history to be acquitted of a major crime due to dissociative identity disorder. The role required Holland to construct and inhabit multiple distinct personalities, each one with its own internal logic, emotional center of gravity, behavioral vocabulary, and unconscious physical life. It was, by any measure, one of the most technically demanding acting challenges available in prestige television. Tom Holland admitted that the role wrecked him because of how emotionally demanding it was. This was an award-winning role, Holland's campaign to win an Emmy. a statement that his role as Spider-Man was just the opening character in his acting journey. But almost everybody disliked The Crowded Room, and it settled at 33% on Rotten Tomatoes. Holland revealed that when the critics' scores came out, it took a toll on him. He told Hollywood Reporter that it was a kick in the teeth. He specifically said, rolling over, looking up the reviews, and then all of a sudden I was like, whoa, that's a bad review. Sometimes there's a redeeming quality in there. There was nothing. The reviews were diagnostic rather than dismissive. They pointed to the same core problem across every performance. Holland confused the outward signs of a fractured mind with the actual psychological reality beneath them. The benchmark here isn't abstract. James McAvoy's performance in Split, a film built around the same disorder, set the standard for every dissociative identity disorder portrayal that followed. McAvoy played 24 distinct personalities in a single film, and what critics praised wasn't the sheer number of voices or physical changes, but the deep internal logic he gave to each one. Reviewers noted that each personality had a different voice, posture, eyesight, habit, and mindset, and McAvoy acted each role so convincingly that it could be believed that he was a victim of the disorder. Others pointed out how McAvoy went beyond surface changes. At some point, he was playing one personality imitating another, which meant building multiple fully formed inner worlds and holding them all at once. And he did it in such a way that the audience could tell that he was imitating other characters. Holland's approach was different. It felt more like a collection of polished character sketches. The voices were different, the postures were different, and the physical details were all there. The technical homework was done, but the internal architecture, the distinct emotional core, the unique fears and desires, the unconscious logic that makes a personality feel real rather than performed was missing. The results were exactly what critics described: a series of parlor tricks executed with precision, using severe mental illness as a dramatic device without ever truly confronting it. This is Holland's problem as a dramatic actor. He is an extraordinarily capable mimic. He can nail the accent, the posture, the controlled vocal fry, the practiced scowl. What he can't do, at least not yet, is disappear. A great dramatic actor doesn't remind you they're acting. They don't arrive on screen with their effort showing, their technique audible, their craft visible through the frame. Tom Holland, in every prestige role he has attempted, arrives exactly like that, like a highly trained performer working incredibly hard to prove something, but completely unaware that proving it is precisely the problem. The star versus the IP. The prestige failures were damaging, but damage to a reputation can be managed, reframed, and eventually survived. What cannot be reframed is mathematics, because while critics were writing post-mortems on The Crowded Room and Cherry, a separate, colder verdict was being delivered in real time by the only metric Hollywood truly respects, the box office. And that verdict, stripped of all the Golden Boy press coverage and the billion-dollar Spider-Man numbers, told a story too consistent to explain away. Tom Holland cannot open a film. Not on his own, not without a pre-existing brand doing the work for him, and the box office numbers to prove it. 2021's Chaos Walking was an absolute disaster. It had a 9-figure production budget and performed woefully at the box office. The film opened domestically to $3.77 million. Its entire worldwide theatrical run accumulated $26.5 million. The movie generated a net loss of approximately $73.6 million, one of the single largest financial disasters of 2021. Then in February of 22, we got Uncharted. The Sony video game adaptation had a $120 million production budget and grossed $407.1 million worldwide. It was a genuine commercial success by any reasonable measure, and Holland's defenders cite this figure as proof of his box office viability. But that argument collapses when we take a closer look at Uncharted. Unlike Cherry or Chaos Walking, Uncharted is not an original property. It is one of the best-selling video game franchises in PlayStation history, with a global brand cultivated by Naughty Dog over more than a decade and 4 major console releases. When Sony put out Uncharted, they weren't selling a Tom Holland movie, it was selling a live-action rendering of an intellectual property that millions of players had already spent hundreds of hours inside. The audience that bought tickets was not responding to Holland's name on the poster, they were responding to Nathan Drake's name on the poster. Also, Tom Holland was not carrying the film alone. He co-starred with Mark Wahlberg, a veteran action star with a multi-decade track record of opening global action comedies to substantial theatrical audiences. The film's commercial success belongs to the brand recognition of the Uncharted IP and the proven bankability of its ensemble construction. Holland was a component of that formula. He wasn't the engine. Uncharted did not prove that Tom Holland is a movie star. It proved, once again, that Tom Holland is an effective custodian of pre-sold intellectual property. And the person who found the best way to point this out wasn't a critic, an analyst, or a Hollywood executive. It was one of Holland's own MCU colleagues. Anthony Mackie, speaking at a fan convention, delivered what has become the defining statement on the economics of franchise acting.
The evolution of the business has gone to, like, there are no movie stars anymore. Like, Anthony Mackie isn't a movie star. The Falcon is a movie star. And that's what's weird. It used to be with Tom Cruise and Will Smith and Stallone and Schwarzenegger. When you went to the movies, you went to go see the Stallone movie. You went to go see the Schwarzenegger movie. Now you go see X-Men. So the evolution of the superhero has meant the death of the movie star.
Anthony Mackie was not describing a failure that is unique to Tom Holland. He was describing a structural industry reality, one that Holland's career simply illustrates with unusual clarity. The modern franchise machine doesn't create stars, it creates costumed brand ambassadors, markets them as stars, and the difference only becomes visible when the costume comes off. The proof that this is a systematic problem rather than a personal one comes from looking at Holland's MCU co-stars. Chris Hemsworth is globally recognized as Thor. He is one of the most physically imposing and conventionally charismatic leading men of his generation. Outside of the walls of Asgard, however, his commercial record is a graveyard. Black Hat, Michael Mann's 2015 hacker thriller, earned just $19.6 million worldwide against a $70 million production budget. A loss so severe that the director Michael Mann publicly blamed himself for the film's failure. In The Heart of the Sea, Ron Howard's 2015 epic, co-starring Tom Holland, grossed $94.3 million against a $100 million production budget, a result Deadline described as a major box office bomb. The pattern is so consistent across Hemsworth's non-MCU filmography that there is an entire Reddit thread asking whether he's box office poison outside of Marvel. But it's not just Hemsworth. Chris Evans built one of the most beloved characters in MCU history over a decade as Captain America. But post-Endgame, his solo commercial record outside the franchise is equally thin. Knives Out was a success, and Evans shined in his role as the villainous Ransom Drysdale. But outside of that, his other projects have disappointed or underwhelmed. His Apple TV show, Defending Jacob, was solid, if unspectacular. Lightyear was a box office bomb. Ghosted marked an all-time low for Evans and Ana de Armas, while his upcoming Netflix film, Pain Hustlers, currently has a 23% from critics on Rotten Tomatoes. The pattern across these three careers points to the same thing that Anthony Mackie said. These actors were never the draw. The logos, the masks, the interconnected universes, and the decades of pre-existing brand equity were the draw. Strip it away, and what remains is not a movie star. What remains is an actor waiting for the next franchise to put the suit back on. The physical and archetypal trap. The box office delivered one verdict, but numbers are a lagging indicator. They only confirm a problem after the damage is done. To understand why the damage is so hard to reverse, one has to move beyond the numbers and look at something more fundamental. Something no reboot, no franchise attachment, and no PR campaign can easily fix. Hollywood has always operated on archetypes: the rugged leading man, the dangerous romantic, or the battle-worn authority figure. These archetypes are not assigned by casting directors. They are projected by the actor's physical and vocal presence, by what the camera reads instinctively before a single line of dialogue is delivered. Every enduring movie star in the classical and modern era has possessed the ability to age into new archetypes. The ability to move from the youthful amateur into roles requiring genuine authority, danger, and gravitational weight. Cary Grant aged from screwball comedy into the sophisticated menace. Tom Hanks moved from comedic charm into profound moral gravity. Even Denzel Washington, already commanding in his youth, deepened into something almost biblical as he aged. Tom Holland, at 29 years old, has not made that transition, and the evidence that he may be structurally incapable of making it arrived most visibly in the film his defenders most frequently cite as a commercial success. In Uncharted, people identified the casting as the film's single biggest problem. MovieWeb, in its review, said that Tom Holland was miscast in a lackluster adaptation. Another publication, Shakefire, went even further, saying that the first and biggest thing wrong with Uncharted is how terribly miscast both Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg are as Nate and Sully. Both of them are fine actors and action heroes, but they just do not fit their roles. It noted that the characters feel entirely different people compared to the ones that the audience knows from the games. The character of Nathan Drake demands a specific quality: world-weary physicality, a dangerous charm built from years of hard experience, the rugged authority of a man who has survived things that should have killed him. He is, in the video game canon, a fully formed adult, dangerous man.
Did we get it? No, we didn't get it. We're moving on? No, we're not moving on.
I'll be in my trailer, guys.
But what Holland delivered was a boy playing dress-up in that man's clothes.
Sorry. Hey, what can I get you?
Vodka tonic.
Vodka tonic, come on. It's my first drink of the night. Test me a little.
His voice, his frame, his screen presence, all of it registered as adolescent, not charmingly youthful, adolescent. The audience was not watching Nathan Drake. They were watching Spider-Man without the suit. And the cognitive dissonance of that gap between the character the brand demanded and the performer the camera was actually capturing was never resolved across the film's entire runtime.
Look, I've been dreaming about this since I was a kid, but somehow you already knew that.
You know, when Sam said he had a little brother who was just as into this Magellan stuff, I thought there's no way.
Wait, you know my brother Sam?
Oh, we were practically friends.
This is the perfect example of the archetypal trap. Holland is physically and vocally locked in a register that reads as teenage or early 20s on screen, regardless of the role written around him. It is not a character choice. It is a psychological reality, and in an industry whose leading man roles increasingly require performers to project danger, authority, and adult complexity, it is a ceiling that narrows with each passing year. The contrast with Timothée Chalamet is a comparison that Holland cannot win in any dimension. Chalamet is around the same age, has a similar slender frame, and operates in the same age gap. On paper, they should face the same limitations, but the audience sees them entirely differently. Denis Villeneuve, who directed Chalamet across both Dune films, described it simply. There's something very romantic about his presence in front of the camera. He has an insane charisma that is found in old Hollywood stars from the 20s. That kind of old silent movie charisma that is very rare. Across those two films, Chalamet commanded armies, navigated deadly political landscapes, and projected the quiet menace of a messiah figure without a Marvel-sized CGI safety net. His performance in The King required him to embody the cold authority of Henry V, a young king hardening into a calculating military ruler, and he carried it entirely on internal psychological weight. Chalamet has announced that Dune Part 3 will be his final appearance in the franchise, a deliberate strategic exit from a commercially successful IP in order to protect his artistic range and prevent franchise calcification. He he is very actively managing the very trap that Holland has already fallen into. Chalamet has consistently chosen roles that demand psychological complexity and push him into uncomfortable emotional territory. Meanwhile, Holland has consistently retreated to franchise safety after each prestige failure, returning to the Spider-Man mask instead of pushing through difficult material. The result is that at nearly the same age, Chalamet has built a genuine adult identity on screen, dangerous, unconventional, and cinematically authoritative, while Holland remains stuck in permanent cinematic adolescence. The industry has noticed, and what is currently happening with his most anticipated non-MCU project is direct proof of that. For years, Holland has been attached to star in a Fred Astaire biopic for Sony Pictures, directed by Paddington filmmaker Paul King, with a screenplay co-written by Lee Hall. On paper, this was the perfect project that aligned with Holland's background in dance and musical theatre, with the demands of a prestige biopic about one of Hollywood's greatest performers. It was intended to be his definitive transition into adult prestige cinema. In November 2025, the project hit a wall that may prove insurmountable. TMZ obtained a legal letter sent by Fred Astaire's widow, Robin Astaire, directly to producer Amy Pascal, making the estate's position unambiguous. Robin stated that Fred was explicit in his will that he did not want his life story to be depicted on screen, and confirmed that the estate had not authorized the portrayal or any portrayal in any film. She threatened direct legal action if producers claimed otherwise or moved forward. The biopic has been in development since 2021. Holland himself had revealed in November of 2023 that they are working towards it as if it were happening, and expressed hope to shoot in 2024. That shoot never materialized. As of the legal letters dispatch in late 2025, the project has stalled completely, with no confirmed production date, no studio greenlight, and an estate actively threatening litigation. But the legal obstruction, as damaging as it is, may not even be the deeper problem. Because a studio that truly believed in Tom Holland's commercial value would have found a way around a legal challenge. Studios have overcome far worse for properties they genuinely believed in. The deeper reality, the one nobody at Sony is saying out loud, is that the catastrophic returns of Chaos Walking and the critical failure of The Crowded Room have quietly turned Holland's name from an automatic green light into a question mark on risk assessment. And in an industry terrified of nine-figure losses, a question mark is almost as damaging as a legal letter. The public perception shift. The last thing propping up Tom Holland's image as a generational talent was public perception, and for years, a compliant entertainment press and a carefully managed PR machine worked hard to keep it standing. However, that image is fading away, and what is causing it is not a single scandal, a single box office disaster, or some brutal review. It is something more damaging, a slow, irreversible cultural re-evaluation happening in real time across the platforms that now shape how an entire generation understands cinema. The conversation around Holland has visibly shifted. The community that once celebrated his Spider-Man charm is now applying a more critical lens, with threads dedicated to interrogating his acting range, his casting choices, and the growing gap between his public image and the demands of real dramatic work. People talk about how his range as an actor doesn't seem to be too high, and people just see Spider-Man when they see Tom Holland in other movies. The traits that made Holland universally lovable in 2016, the breathless earnestness, the eager-to-please boyishness, and the unguarded enthusiasm are now regularly described as grating, manufactured, and exhausting. One widely circulated Reddit thread asked the question, is Tom Holland at the risk of overexposure? And spoke about how a lot of people are starting to get annoyed with him, but haven't outrightly started a media witch hunt for him the way they usually would for female celebrities. This shift isn't random. It's the predictable outcome of a specific kind of fame, one that was algorithmically built, relentlessly optimized, but fundamentally hollow at its core. Holland's public persona has been created with remarkable precision for digital engagement. He is non-threatening, endlessly polite, earnest without irony, and thoroughly sanitized. Every public appearance, every press tour, every viral moment is calibrated to generate maximum relatability across the widest possible demographic. The formula has worked commercially. The engagement metrics are enormous. The fanbase is devoted, and the algorithmic feedback loops have consistently rewarded the persona with visibility. But algorithmic validation isn't the same as genuine charisma. The difference is like that between someone who naturally commands a room and someone who has simply memorized the behaviors of a room-commanding person. One is alive and unpredictable. The other is a performance of charisma, convincing at a glance, but hollow under closer inspection. Holland's public persona is the latter, highly measurable, infinitely scalable, and completely safe. And safety, in the currency of genuine cinematic authority, is worthless. The theater kid critique that has hardened around him in cultural discourse captures this problem with uncomfortable accuracy. In contemporary usage, the theater kid archetype isn't about theatrical training. It describes a specific performative mode, excessive earnestness, a desperate eagerness to please, the tendency to project every emotion at full volume rather than trust the audience to meet you halfway. It describes a performer who is always visibly performing, always working the room, always hitting the mark, always executing the choreography with flawless precision and zero spontaneous life. Holland embodies this archetype completely. On screen and off screen, he reliably delivers the technically correct version of every moment. The blocking is perfect, the delivery is crisp, and the emotional beats arrive on schedule. What's never there is the quality that separates genuine movie stars from skilled performers. The faint, thrilling danger that the performer might do something the script didn't anticipate. That the character might break loose and do something genuinely surprising. Marlon Brando possessed this quality so completely that directors were genuinely uncertain what he would do in any given take. Denzel Washington carries it in every scene he inhabits. Even Robert Pattinson radiates it. These performers don't look like they're acting. They look like they're existing inside a fictional reality. Tom Holland, stripped of the billion-dollar CGI environments, the veteran co-stars carrying the dramatic weight, and the pre-sold franchise branding mobilizing the audience, looks exactly like what he is. A highly trained, technical performer working very hard to convince you he is something more. And the tragedy of it is that the harder he works to prove it, the more impossible it becomes to believe.